Hello, welcome to this chapter. Here we'll see one of the two main branches in this move order, which is after bishop f4, which is one of the critical lines, I'd say. And white wants to pressure on d6 immediately, and after, if we were to play bishop g7, which I explain a lot also in the model games, queen a4 check is not necessarily winning for white, but after bishop d7, here b5, bishop d6, I mean, it gets very messy pretty quickly. And I don't think it's worth for us to memorize all these lines and all this critical stuff. So I went for a6 straightforward. So basically we cover the b5 square and we prevent queen a4 check. And after a4, we want to keep up with bishop g7. Yeah. I mean, if you know your opponent doesn't play queen a4 check, or you want to spend some time of queen a4 check, bishop g7 has some small advantages, as we can play knight a6 later on, which is an extra move. But besides that, I prefer a6. It's a bit more simple and makes more sense. But here we'll cover e4. That basically it's an extra option white has. Here queen a4 check is not a threat, because after b5 white takes with bishop d7, and basically we are just winning the piece, yeah, because the bishop on the 8 is defense here, and yeah, white doesn't have a way out. Let's say in case of e4, we could even go for queen b6 and just increase the pressure here, and we will just take the piece. So white plays e4, white wants to get to the center. b5, we obviously get the space here, but here we are lacking some development, so white has some tricky lines. If white tries to play e5, like we just take, and suddenly now bishop d6, we get an extra interesting position that we get a very nice blockade, and after castling rook e8, we have an excellent position. Like later on knight c7, like basically the bishop here helps a lot, and the weakness on h6 is not really relevant. And white won't be able to do anything with the pawn center. So basically after castling, rook e8, and then queen c7, let's say, to get some presence on the dark squares, then knight e7, and basically white will be left with these two pieces that are a bit stupid, as white cannot change the structure, and those will be defending d5, and we'll have an extra good blockade, an extra pawn, and also we'll be able to push later on or to pressure d5 freely. Yeah, and white also can play bishop e2, but looks a bit weird in my opinion. Like, okay, after b4, we just take the pawn. I mean, this is very similar to the to when white plays d4, knight f6, knight f3, and we play c5 and b5. White sometimes sacrifices a central pawn and tries to castle fast, so we need to be a bit careful. So here, for instance, we need to play f5 so we can castle. So here we give up the pawn, yeah. And here the only threat is this crazy knight e6. I mean, I just mentioned it, but it's crazy because here we shouldn't be able to take on f4, but as queen d5 has a double threat of the rook and then e7 check. But here after queen e8, which is a bit precise, taking on e8, rook f8, and thanks to this double threat, we will take on e6, and just imagine this pawn center, yeah? And we have a very good compensation for it. The knight later on might go to d4, and we will push for the center, bishop d4, we are threatening also b2, so we have a lot of counterplay just for, and also very nice center, just for the exchange, yeah? So, yeah, I mean, there are some lines here that it's super unlikely. I mean, this e4 is already very unlikely. You faced, as most Benoni players, whenever you play a6, they will play a4 instantly. Trust me, like all my games have been like this. But okay, e4 is possible, and here queen e2 is somewhat trending, and white wants to play e5. Yeah, so here we would need to play bishop e7. It's not ideal, but we get a lot on the queen side already. We get a lot of space and for our pieces later on. So it's a good investment, I'd say. Here white can try to play queen c2 later on and say, okay, I forced you to play bishop e7. I'm happy with that. After castle, try to play a4. I mean, this is everything very subtle, but the idea for white is to force b4 and then get to c4. No matter with d1, e3 or b1, d2. And here we usually want to make white uncomfortable, because if white plays bishop d3, knight d3 here, it would be more or less perfect. So here we play b3, so we kick the queen. And now, after rook e8, white has some troubles here, and we play a5. And now bishop a6, and we have some exchange. So here we don't allow white to play kind of the perfect setup. And after bishop a6, we have also the square on b4. I mean, again, this setup is very weird for white. I mean, here also long castle is possible. This is a chapter just for you to browse and to learn some themes, but this is everything. I'm almost creating all the theory. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, before doing this course, I never really checked deep into these lines. I mean, in general, the Benoni is more about ideas, but since we play a6, which is a precise move order, it's worth to more or less get the idea here. And here castle on e5 also looks threatening. And again, we have to be aware, as here d6 we would be resigning, because we are losing material thanks to the pin. So here knight h5, and here rook e8, and here we are playing b4. We have presence in the center. White doesn't really can take. But e6 is the only threat, as white wants to get wants to take here and then get the square on d5. But after knight c6, I mean, we will play bishop f6, bishop e7, knight goes to g7. Like, what I like about this position is that all our pieces are, have an objective best square here. So after the knight is stranded on h5, so we go to g7. The bishop will develop to b7. After knight d4, we'll get this column, or we get some presence in the center. The bishop f6 coordinates very well. So basically, I like to leave you whenever the moves feel natural, feel logical, even though the position is a bit crazy. Yeah. So again, this line, I mean, yeah, it's somewhat interesting, but yeah, bishop d3 is the main idea, but I don't think it's worth for white. I mean, it has some very precise subtleties that the engine says, but yeah, it's not likely you will face it again. And here knight h5. It's also a common theme that we will see it in the chapter of bishop e2, knight f3, knight d2, that white, since white played bishop f4 very quickly and we still have the bishop on f8, sometimes we want to play knight h5, so we have room to play knight d7 and concrete the center. Yeah. And here, for instance, bishop g4 should be fine, like it's very thematic, but after h3, take, bishop g7, castle, a4, it happens that we kind of have a loose queenside because we cannot move this knight as this pawn is falling, and basically white wants to get our light squares. After here knight b1, it will be very tricky for us to develop as we are not in time. But here, even this is a worst case scenario, but even here we would need to defend d6, let's say, for example. And now knight d2, knight d7, knight c4, maybe we could be able to play knight e8. But the main issue here as well is that we are facing e5 a lot of the time. So here d6, and this rook is hanging, and white gets a lot of presence, and again the knight goes here. So yeah, it's very dynamically precise for white. It works very well, but it's also a great way to understand that, okay, we are achieving something concrete, we are getting space on the queen side, but we are also committing ourselves to some moves, so white can try to counterattack. So yeah, the concept of counterattack is very much common with black pieces here in the Benoni, but you see how, okay, we also are paying a price for getting a space. Yeah, so this is a great example, I feel. And okay, knight h5 is a bit more precise. After bishop g5, we want to exchange these bishops, and again, whenever white is left with these two pieces, white doesn't have any kind of threats with the center, so we will get this extra space. So here, bishop e6, and now bishop g4 makes a lot more sense. Again, we want to play knight d7, at some point take on f3, exchange the bishop on h6, so we get all the dark squares and we leave white with these two pieces. So here, for instance, bishop e2 is a bit smarter. It's a very thematic idea whenever the knight is on h5, as whenever we take, the bishop takes, and there is this knight on h5. And here, knight d7, it's a bit logical. We are not in a hurry. And whenever white plays h3, we just take, and bishop g5. And Basically, we get all the squares we need for our pieces. We don't mind really this structure. Like we have here in this case, even it's dangerous thanks to rook g8. But even in the worst case scenario, let's say that white achieves this, this is not that bad because we have f5, which is important to get a counterplay to thin this center. And if white tries to play f4, f5, we get all these nice squares, and now we get a very strong knight. And remember that considering all this, we are spraying all these themes and ideas, we got the space on the queen side. So everything changes, like b4 is always a threat, white needs always to be ready to move this knight, to be ready to defend e4, like we have permanent counterplay. So it changes a lot. In the long run, it's very good for us. We get the space, and now we fix the king side. So yeah, this line, I mean, you can find it, but it's very precise, and yeah, okay, I don't know. It's good for you to know, but again, yeah, if you have to, let's say, if to get an idea of this chapter is whenever you get something you want to achieve, be careful because you are usually getting more space, or creating a weakness, or creating a spot for a break in the pawn chain. So it, let's say, a great power comes with a great responsibility, yeah, as some people would say. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this chapter, and yeah, see you in another one.